So, Isaac, you are not the founder of Stop Having Kids, but you do activism with them, right?
That's correct. Yeah.
And I think I saw the website released last week. It's relatively new, right?
Yeah, it's pretty recent. The person who made it is my friend, an activist friend of mine, and they've been working on it real hard these last few months.
Is it anybody that we may know in the antinatalist community?
Not that I know of. They kind of stay off some of the social media stuff, which understandable. There's a lot going on,
Yeah.
but so they I met them through activism. So unless you're in, I think like vegan activist circles, you probably haven't met them.
Yeah. Forever Wolf Films, Amanda Oldfan Sukanik, she says, hello, Isaac. Thanks for coming on. I don't know if
Oh,
you're,
nice.
yeah. And so this is your friend. Have you gone to, like, how many events have they had so far? Like street activism?
Well, we've done some events before the website released of like we both live not too far from each other, but so we've been doing things on and off in our respective cities with different signs, like not stop having kids signs, but some different ones. And then they started working on their project, and we started like unifying sort of the branding because we had different words for different things, whatever we came up with for ourselves. And since this wording got unified and the site got going, we've had maybe a half dozen. We've had like I think 3 events in Seattle. We're gonna do the one next week. We're gonna try to do them weekly, I think, but I'm not sure how many they've had in their city. I'm sure around 4 or 5 at least.
So you're gonna have a weekly event, street activism, doing like holding that banner, and you're handing out some type of not a pamphlet, but like a card, right? An information card.
Yeah, those are some cards I made before Stop Having Kids was made. I just wanted to have because I use cards for other activism like street outreach for veganism, and they're super handy. They're so small that anyone takes them and they have links and resources on them. So I made some for antinatalism for when I do that. So um, I just had those personally. They actually have some literature on the website if you want to use Stop Having Kids literature, and they're going to have some of their own cards as well if you want to use cards. But yeah, having those, having cards, literature, there are some sign designs that are available now. So I'm going to print some of those out for next week, and of course the banner.
So the cards, does it have a link to the website? What resources do you have on those cards if I was to get one?
The cards, I didn't design them, but the person who made the site made them. It has a link to the website, a QR code on it, and a few questions to think about. Why consider antinatalism or why consider whether having kids is good or bad. Um, and that's pretty much it. Pretty clean.
Cool. The chat, someone in the chat asks, how do people generally react to the signs?
Honestly, so since I started doing some anti-natalist stuff, which hasn't been for super long, I always thought it would be very negative, but honestly, like 90% of people are either just curious or positive. I think it kind of depends on some of the sign content. We had a different sign that we've used before that was a little more doom and gloom about, the state of the world and the earth and what we're doing to it and why we should consider not having kids because of some of those reasons. And the sort of gloom and doom wording got a few more negative responses, but still mostly curiosity. But when we have the sort of to the stop having kids, keeping it simple, and we're out there just playing some music, dancing, and like doing peace signs and smiling and waving at folks, people were like really happy that we're there. Like it really seemed to give them a bump. And people, even people with children, like lots of children, they'll stop and just have a conversation with us. Like, what are you doing out here? I'm just kind of curious. Almost nobody seems negative.
So what's the conversations like when people do come up to you?
Usually it's honest curiosity of, oh, so what's your message about? Because it's really only 3 words, so might as well expand on it. So like, oh, we're out here encouraging people to question whether having kids is a good thing or what their reasons for it are, or because people have many different motivations for having children. And so we want to look at those and ask whether those are actually good reasons or whether they are motivations that could be better channeled. And so just kind of there are some things on the website that sort of break down good questions to ask if you're considering having kids, and good reasons to really hesitate about that. And we try to touch on those.
Yeah. The So do you do this in conjunction with your animal rights activism in a week?
Yeah, we haven't done as much animal rights stuff on the streets this last year. We still do it pretty frequently, but with COVID going on, it's not as many people want to talk to strangers on the street. But so we usually we that activism is much more face-to-face conversations. Like it's conversation after conversation after conversation. But the stop having kids it's a little easier to do during COVID because people can see your message from on a big banner without having to talk to you if they don't want to. They can just look up the website.
Yeah.
So, which was one reason why it's been kind of a relief to have something that doesn't rely on just conversations.
In chat, someone Forever Wolf Films asks, "Is Stop Having Kids a registered NGO currently?"
I'm not actually sure what it's registered as.
Okay.
It might be in the frequently asked questions on the website.
So other than your friend, is there like a core team behind the website, the organization? Is there like more people or?
I know that they have a few other folks that they're working with. I don't think I've met them personally.
Okay.
Because they're sort of local to where the city they're at. Sometimes like we'll chat about site content, like them and I, or I'll get a few ideas from friends. Like, have you considered this? Have you considered that? Maybe tweak the site in the area there.
Yeah.
So there's some idea sharing here and there, but I think the core team is probably no more than a couple people.
Okay. Yeah, I was wondering if the articles on the website. So we've gone through a lot actually. We've gone through no desire, no consent, life is suffering, existing life in need of help, parenthood, regret, birth defects, escapism, life enjoyment is far from guarantee. Enough humans already. We struggle to care for ourselves. Wage laborers, scarcity, risking hell. So the screwing over other species is under development. My kid will save the planet, risking incarceration, and we're currently on sexual violence. So we just started reviewing that. Do you know if like one person in particular are writing these articles, or is it like each person, or is there some type of writer outsourced?
I don't think any of it's been outsourced. I know my friend has been working on the bulk of the writing, and they do, as far if I remember correctly, they do have an editor who's helping them, with wording here and there and like typos, that kind of stuff. I'm not sure if there are any others contributing to the writing. I'll have to ask them.
Okay.
But I do. Sorry,
Sorry,
I
go
do
ahead.
know they considered having guests add some articles in the future, maybe once like when the sites got a little bit more rolling.
Yeah. Forever Wolf Films asks, "Do you know if Stop Having Kids has any long-term initiatives?"
Like legal initiatives or
Any
sort of like a.
any long-term goals, I guess, like even for the organization or for the propagation of antinatalism, or I don't know, anything.
I think the number one goal is just to make antinatalism activism a thing, because activism already exists for other causes. Like we've talked about some climate change, animal rights, you name it, gender rights, and everything. And but you just don't really see much antinatalism activism. And I think just getting that started and wherever it goes from there is just the main goal.
When you classify activism, you mean like street activism, eh? Like how? What would you define activism as?
Not just street activism. There is some. There's lots of different kinds of activism. Street activism was one that is near and dear to my heart, so
Yeah.
that's something I think of first.
Yeah.
But any sort of like actively engaging with strangers to convince them of some position in the pursuit of justice, I suppose.
Yeah. Okay. Chat asks from Antinatalist Outreach, any idea of the website traffic stats? Has there been a spike in website visits or inquiries after your street activism?
I don't have direct access to that data, but they did share with me that in the last few weeks it's been spiking a bit since it's been launched. And I'm not sure if any of that's due to the street activism, but I certainly hope so.
Yeah. What kind of source material do you think they use or that you use?
Personally, So we've had a fair amount. I'm not sure
So small
what
small
their favorite
thing that I
stuff.
was like looking at. So like the environmental arguments, the health arguments. I saw maybe two or three quotes from Benatar, I think, on the website.
Mm.
So I was just curious. Like, I haven't finished looking at the whole website, but I'm wondering if his material was sort of like a source material, or if other antinatalism stuff is referenced on the website.
I don't actually know any specific sources besides Benatar. I think so many people know Benatar that it's kind of an obvious
Yeah.
inspiration. Both the site creator and I are heavily inspired by his work. I've often looked at and taken inspiration from the um, voluntary human extinction movement, which is VHEMT. It's an older website, but it's antinatalist, but it's also adding on that we should let the human species like deliberately die out, not by any sort of violent methods, but just by no longer reproducing. And they're very similar websites in their content. The voluntary human extinction movement is an older one, and you can see it, but the amount of content and the breadth of it is extremely impressive. And I think Stop Having Kids is analogous to that. It's like an almost like an updated reimagining of it. So
Yeah, that I remember someone saying it reminds them of like Vehement 2.0.
yeah,
The
definitely.
Yeah, I think Amanda, you said that. The website, like the message, is it human centric about human procreation, or is it against all procreation from all sentient animals?
This specifically, Stop Having Kids, does target just humans. I'm not sure what the creator's stance is on like sentient life and broadly. That'd be a good question to ask. That'd be a good conversation to have.
I'm assuming that a lot of the members are vegan. Would that be a good assumption?
I don't think we have like an official group of members for Stop Having Kids, but everyone I've been doing stuff with, yeah, we're vegan, and there's a huge amount of overlap.
Yeah. Do you see a connection between anthropocentric antinatalism and sentiocentric antinatalism, or is antispeciesism or veganism? Do you see a connection with those ideologies?
I definitely see a connection. I think, at least from my perspective, it all comes down to minimizing suffering. That's what I think most people would say like veganism is about, trying to prevent and minimize suffering. I think that's what a lot of antinatalists would say a goal is. And I think that's what a lot of antinatalists for any sentient life would be, is that if suffering only comes from sentient life and you want to minimize and prevent suffering, then we should prevent the propagation of sentient life. So yeah, I think it's all deeply connected.
Yeah. Okay. And do they have a comment or on extinction, or do they stay away from that topic?
I don't think what's touched on in the literature that is currently on the site, and I'm not sure if there is an intent to go into that. Um, I personally am okay with extinction. I do resonate with VHEMT, but I don't know if it'll go there. Well, that'll be good to see.
Yeah, practically everyone taking this up, voluntarily seems to be not that practical, but it's a thing the voluntary human extinction movement would like to see.
It's a good sort of pie in the sky dream.
Yeah, yeah. Do you think? How do you feel about animal rights and veganism being a pie in the sky? Do you think that's much more like? Are we looking for reduction or mitigation of harm and waiting for lab grown meat, or is it just like it's a pie in the sky goal for this vegan world that it's good to strive for, but the practicalities might be like insurmountable.
I don't think the practicalities are insurmountable. I do really think it just comes down to changing perspectives, and like we all have parents or relatives who are like super old fashioned and conservative with their thoughts, and they might be, you know, more racist or sexist or you name it than we like. But the next generation has a different perspective and a different state of mind, and more we outlearn, we unlearn our discrimination easier with each generation, and with the addition of the internet and new technology and activism of all kinds, it makes it even easier to unlearn these sort of discriminatory ways. So I do think that it's a completely achievable goal to someday get the world vegan. But I am convinced that climate change will probably hit us too hard before we'll get there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One thing that I noticed, compared to other antinatalism websites, this one doesn't seem to be like a philosophical, geeky kind of website. Was that intentional? Like, there's no talk about axiological asymmetries or delving more into, issues of consent or Julio Cabrera or, I don't know, more antinatalism philosophers. Was that intentional or?
I haven't asked. I haven't asked that specifically, but what I would imagine is that this is made to get as many eyes in the world as possible, and for any eyes to read it to understand it. Like, this is not.
Yeah.
It's meant to reach wide audiences as much as possible, and the geeky stuff, I geek out tremendously on the geeky stuff. I love it, but it does turn a lot of people away once you start talking about the heavy philosophy. I do know it does touch on, it does have a page about consent specifically,
Yeah.
which is actually one of the dearest things to me about antinatalism, is that even if we didn't have all these other problems like, climate change and our footprint on the earth and that sort of stuff, you still can't get consent from someone you can't give it. And so I'm glad that that's included.
Yeah. And I may have asked this in our last talk, but what's their reaction been like because you live in a vegan household, right? Like, you have a team that, I don't know what to call it, like it's like, they have a name for it. When you get a bunch of activists together and you live in a common, like, shared household, right?
Mm-hmm.
Are you still in that condition?
I'm not in the same like exact house,
Oh,
but
okay.
I am still living with the same individuals.
So I was curious about, like, what do they think, and also what do your friends and family think, and coworkers? Like, what's the reaction been in your personal life?
So most of my friends that I do like vegan activism with, the majority are on board, and I think most vegans I've ever spoken to, even if they haven't like deeply considered it, once they hear the idea, it's like, oh, I guess that makes sense, So my close friends that I do a lot of stuff with, they're fully supportive. That's where they're doing it with me. I don't talk about it too much with my family. My family knows that I'm different than. They don't really expect anything normal anymore. So they might roll their eyes when I'm gone, but when I'm around, they're polite. I don't really talk about too much activism stuff around at work, just because I guess I try to keep those worlds separate, for better or for worse.
Do
But
any of your coworkers know about your position?
they definitely know about animal rights. They could very easily find out about antinatalism if they wanted to, but I don't really parade it around.
Okay.
I mean, if they asked, I'm sure I would totally tell them. But
Okay. Cool. All right. Well, I don't think I have any further questions. Thanks for coming on the live stream with in such short notice. Was there anything that you'd like to say before we end?
just thanks for having me on. I hope you get to speak to the creator too. They're a great friend of mine and an amazing resource for the movement and other movements. And I guess I would say that if you are inspired by seeing people holding signs on the street, get some signs and stand on the street. It is life changing. It's a drug. Please do it.
We got one more question here from chat. What advice can you give for antinatalism outreach to strangers?
Always be polite. Well, there's so many, like, I guess what I'd say when you're talking about perhaps controversial topic with strangers and you're trying to convince them, just don't make any assumptions. Just always be nice. Don't make any assumptions. Talk to them as if they're a great friend, and everything will be great from there.
Cool. Yeah. All right. Thanks again for the chat. I appreciate that. And have a good rest of your night.
Thank you. You too.
All right, take care.
See ya.